I found the envelope taped to my bedroom door and froze. It wasn't the first time my parents had humiliated me, but it was the first time they'd done it with a deadline. "You have 7 days to find your own place," it read, typed in cold, precise letters. No signature, no apology, just those words. 7 days, and a lifetime of being invisible. My name is Emily Parker. I'm 22, and I grew up in a house where silence was punishment and smiles were conditional. My father, Richard, measured my worth in obedience. My mother, Claire, in appearances. My older brother, Alex, never raised his hand, but his sneers could shrink me in a heartbeat. Growing up, I learned the language of avoidance. Speak softly, stay small, make myself useful, never expect kindness. That morning had begun like any other. I brewed my coffee, reviewed my freelance design briefs, and tried to ignore the tension that clung to every corner of the house. By noon, Alex wandered into the kitchen, tossing my favorite mug across the counter without a word. "It's in the way," he muttered. That was our family's version of love. Dismissal disguised as casual criticism. When I confronted my mom about the envelope, she didn't flinch. "Emily, it's time you understood," she said, cutting her salad into neat, symmetrical pieces as though I weren't standing there. "You're too dependent. Alex needs space for his studies. This is better for everyone." I nodded slowly, masking the storm inside. Every word they spoke reminded me of the years I spent trying to prove I belonged. I worked late to help pay the bills, cooked when they were too busy to notice, stayed silent when their words cut deeper than any knife. And none of it mattered. That night, I sat on my bedroom floor surrounded by boxes, my laptop open, spreadsheets and client lists glowing faintly in the dim light. I started calculating, not just rent, not just bills, but influence, connections, the value of being underestimated. They had treated me like a ghost in my own home. Soon, they would learn what happens when ghosts return with strategy. I imagined my parents' smug expressions, Alex's arrogant smirk, the little games, the subtle humiliation. All of it could be turned carefully, quietly, without them realizing it, into leverage. My anger was steady now, measured, not childish, not impulsive. By dawn, the decision crystallized. I wouldn't plead, I wouldn't compromise. I would leave, but not just to survive. I would leave to build something they couldn't control, something they would one day beg to be a part of. I packed my first box, careful and deliberate. Every item I touched was a silent declaration, this isn't a surrender, it's a beginning. And as I locked the door behind me for the first time, I smiled. They thought they were the ones in control. They had no idea what I was about to do next. The first week out of my parents' house was quieter than I expected. My little apartment smelled faintly of paint and ambition, the fluorescent light above the kitchenette buzzing softly. No one was here to judge, to correct, to remind me I wasn't enough. For the first time, I could think clearly, strategize, plan. I set up my laptop and scanned my contacts, clients I'd quietly helped over the years, the friends who had always believed in me, the small businesses that had relied on my designs when bigger firms had overlooked them. Every name was a thread, a tiny piece of leverage I had never realized I possessed while living under my family's shadow. My father had spent decades convincing me I was incompetent. My mother had trained me to apologize for taking up space. Alex had made me feel invisible. But now, I had no one to answer to, and suddenly, I could see the truth. My work mattered more than their approval. Their control was an illusion. By day 3, I started taking calls from old clients. Polite, professional, precise. No bitterness, just presence. Slowly, the orders came back in. The kind that paid more than before, because suddenly I wasn't competing with their expectations. I was setting my own terms. Meanwhile, I observed my family from a distance. Social media, occasional glimpses in local spots, casual mentions from mutual acquaintances. My parents didn't notice at first. They assumed I was struggling, assumed I'd come crawling back, like always. Alex flaunted new gadgets, a new car, new friends. My mother posted perfectly curated photos of family dinners that didn't include me. Everything looked normal, but I could see the cracks. My plan was quiet, deliberate, not revenge through anger, but through competence, through success. I would become untouchable in the very areas they had belittled me. They had trained me to be meticulous, organized, and strategic, and now I would use it against the very system that had tried to erase me. By the end of the second week, I had secured 3 major contracts and a steady retainer from a company that had once ignored my proposals. My confidence grew with every email sent, every client call handled with calm authority. Each success was a silent message to my family. I didn't need their permission. I didn't need their validation. Late one night, while reviewing invoices and timelines, I realized the most powerful part of my plan wasn't the money. It wasn't the contracts. It was the anticipation, the waiting, the subtle way I would make them realize I had been indispensable long before I walked out the door. And when that moment came, when they finally understood, they wouldn't just regret pushing me away, they would see what they had lost, and it would be far too late to reclaim. For now, I smiled quietly, sipping my lukewarm coffee. The first move had been made, and Emily Parker, once invisible, once silenced, was only just beginning. By the third month, my little apartment had become a command center. Whiteboards covered in client timelines, sticky notes for every follow-up, folders stacked with contracts and projections. Every detail they once dismissed in me, the precision, the discipline, the foresight, was now my weapon. I started receiving calls from companies that had previously passed me over. "Emily Parker?" one CEO asked, voice cautious but intrigued. "We heard about your work. Can we meet?" I smiled. They didn't know that I had built the reputation quietly while they assumed I was struggling. At home, my parents remained blissfully unaware of the storm I was brewing. My mother posted pictures of Alex's accomplishments, proudly noting his future prospects. My father bragged at work about investments and connections, completely ignoring the one person who had always been the glue holding small operations together, me. Then came the first ripple. One of my old freelance clients, a medium-sized marketing firm, messaged me with an urgent project. They had originally promised it to a larger agency, one my family had often patronized through their connections. But now they were turning to me. They wanted my ideas, my execution, my subtle authority. I delivered the project flawlessly. Every detail aligned, every deadline met, every problem foreseen and solved. They were astonished. "You're remarkable," the client said. "We don't know why we ever overlooked you." I only smiled, replying, "Sometimes people fail to notice what's right in front of them." Word traveled quietly. More clients came knocking, offering better contracts, better terms, and more respect. The financial independence I had only dreamed of as a teenager became real, tangible, undeniable. I paid bills with a smile and set aside savings with deliberate precision. Each deposit into my account was a quiet reminder. I didn't need them, and they would eventually see it. Then came the first sign of cracks at home. A distant cousin, innocently mentioning my growing portfolio, accidentally revealed to my parents that I had secured high-paying clients they didn't know existed. My mother's face twitched as she scrolled through my professional profiles. My father muttered under his breath, something about being underestimated. Alex, always smug, was suddenly hesitant in conversation. I didn't contact them. I didn't gloat. I let the whispers reach their ears, let the comparison fester. The realization would be theirs, slow and bitter. That was the point. And while they were busy projecting an image of control and superiority, I was quietly building influence, credibility, and financial independence. The little girl they had once dismissed, mocked, and confined was no longer small. She was a presence that could not be ignored. Late one night, as I updated a client report, I paused and looked around my apartment. No one here dictated my worth. No one here decided my value. And when my parents finally realized, by the 6th month, everything had shifted in ways my parents still couldn't grasp. My email inbox overflowed with high-profile clients. Contracts, negotiations, opportunities, they all flowed through my hands with a confidence I hadn't known I possessed while living under their roof. Every payment, every signed agreement was a quiet victory, a reminder of what they had dismissed. Alex called one evening, his voice unfamiliar, hesitant. "Hey, we heard about the projects you've been landing. That's impressive." I didn't smile. I didn't reassure him. "Thanks," I said calmly. "It's taken a lot of focus." He hesitated, unsure what to say next. That uncertainty, that flicker of recognition that I had grown beyond their expectations, was more satisfying than any praise. At home, my mother had begun to post subtle updates on social media, photos of family achievements, captions praising Alex's work, hints at their lavish lifestyle. But no one noticed the real power shift. The clients they had once taken for granted were now in my corner, fully aware of my skill and dedication. The reputation they had underestimated me for was no longer mine alone. It was visible, undeniable, and thriving. I continued to expand strategically, taking small risks that paid off in ways they could never anticipate. I networked with professionals they had brushed aside, offered offered solutions to problems they assumed were too big for me, and slowly built an empire of credibility and influence that existed entirely beyond their control. One Sunday, I received an unexpected email from my father. Short, tense. "Emily, your mother and we need to talk. Can you come by this week?" I paused, staring at the message. My first instinct was to ignore it. Then I realized how far I had come. The Emily who would have rushed home, seeking approval, pleading for a place in their life, no longer existed. The Emily they needed, the one they wanted back, was the one I had become. Untouchable, respected, independent. I drafted a careful reply. No emotion, no apology, no explanation. Just a professional tone, the kind I had perfected over months of building my own reputation. "I am available Thursday evening," I wrote. As I closed my laptop, I allowed a quiet smile to form. I had walked away as the overlooked child, the one they believed they could control, and returned as someone they couldn't contain. The power dynamics had shifted entirely, and the realization of it would strike them slowly, painfully. They had assumed absence would diminish me. They had assumed control would break me. They were about to learn that absence only sharpened my focus, and control was something I had claimed for myself long before they knew it existed. And the moment I walked into that house again, they wouldn't just see me. They would feel the weight of every opportunity they had ever denied me. By the time Thursday evening arrived, I was ready. Not nervous, not hesitant, just calm, collected, every detail accounted for. I drove to my parents' house in my own car, the one I had purchased with the first big contract I landed. Leather seats, polished exterior, and a quiet reminder that I didn't need anyone to provide me with anything. They opened the door before I could knock. My mother's face was taut, her smile strained. My father stood behind her, eyes wary. Alex lingered in the hallway, pretending not to notice how different I looked, how much more confident I had become. "Emily," my mother said, her voice tight. "It's good to see you." I stepped inside slowly, letting my gaze take in every familiar corner, every small thing they assumed had power over me. "Hello," I said softly. "It's been a while." Dinner was awkward at first. My parents tried their usual tactics, subtle criticism, little reminders of how I had failed in the past, but I was immune. I answered calmly, politely, and never let a single word shake my composure. Each question they asked about my work, my living situation, my life, I answered with quiet authority. "You've changed," my father finally admitted, almost a whisper. "Yes," I said, letting the word linger. "And it wasn't by your permission." My mother shifted uncomfortably. We didn't realize? You didn't realize what I was capable of because you never paid attention," I interrupted gently. "You thought absence would weaken me. You thought dismissing me would make me small. But absence gave me focus, and dismissals gave me determination." Alex's face went pale. He opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. "Let me finish. Every opportunity you ignored, every slight, every moment you thought I didn't matter, I turned them into leverage, not to hurt you, but to build something you can't take away." They didn't respond. They couldn't. I reached into my bag and pulled out my laptop, opening spreadsheets, contracts, and correspondence that showed exactly what I had accomplished in the months they assumed I was floundering. The numbers, the clients, the growth, it was undeniable. My mother's hand trembled slightly. My father's jaw tightened. Alex looked down, silent. "I didn't come back for apologies," I said. "I came back to show you that I'm not the person you tried to erase. I'm stronger, smarter, and independent. And now, you're finally seeing it." I closed the laptop gently and smiled. "You taught me what I didn't want to be, and I became everything you never believed I could be." They sat in silence. The weight of months, maybe years, of underestimation pressed down on them. They had thought control meant power over me. They had assumed I would crumble without them. But now, for the first time, they understood they had lost the narrative, and I hadn't even started the part they would truly never see coming. The silence at the table stretched longer than any argument we'd ever had. My parents shifted uncomfortably, as if the walls themselves were reminding them of every time they had belittled me. Alex stared at his plate, unable to meet my eyes, the confidence he'd always worn now replaced with unease. "I need you to understand something," I said quietly, each word deliberate. "I'm not here to reconcile the past. I'm here to show you what happens when you underestimate someone who's been silent for too long." My mother's lips parted, but no words came. My father cleared his throat, a shaky sound that I realized came from realization more than fear. They thought I would plead for their approval, for guidance, for permission to exist, but I didn't need any of that anymore. Every contract I'd landed, every opportunity I'd seized without their interference was proof they had been irrelevant to my success. I stood, walking to the living room with calm precision. You taught me control doesn't come from words or money or favoritism. You taught me how to calculate, how to anticipate, how to build quietly while being ignored, and I've used every lesson to my advantage. Alex shifted in his seat again. Emily, we didn't. I shook my head. You didn't believe in me. That's the point. And now your ignorance has cost you more than you realize. I pulled out my phone and showed them the latest project I had just closed, a multi-$1,000 deal with a major client they had once said I couldn't handle. This is just one of many, I said softly. Everything I do on my terms, not yours, and every step forward is a reminder of what you tried to take from me. The room was still. My parents looked at each other, the kind of look that mixes pride, fear, and regret all at once. Alex's hands fidgeted. For the first time, the hierarchy they had maintained for decades had shifted completely, silently, irrevocably. I closed my phone and smiled, a quiet, cold smile. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to fight. I just needed to leave and build a life where your opinion didn't matter. And now, you're watching it happen. They sat frozen, the realization settling like a weight they hadn't anticipated. I had been underestimated, dismissed, and silenced for years, but silence had been my ally, invisibility my weapon. And as I turned to leave the room, I knew this was only the beginning. The part they would never anticipate was just getting started. Because the final moves, the ones that would make them truly understand the cost of underestimating me, hadn't even begun yet. The house was quiet when I returned the next week. Too quiet. My parents and Alex moved around like ghosts, careful, subdued, watching me with a mixture of awe and fear. They had begun to realize that the Emily they had ignored, mocked, and dismissed no longer existed. I didn't rush in, didn't announce myself. I let them settle into the uncomfortable truth that the person who had been less than was now untouchable. The contracts, the growing network of clients, the independence, they had all been built quietly, invisibly, while they assumed I was floundering. Emily, my mother said finally, voice brittle, almost shaking, we didn't expect this. I smiled softly, almost tenderly. You assumed absence would weaken me. You assumed your control would limit me, but you forgot one thing. What you tried to break, I rebuilt stronger. Alex's usual smugness had vanished. How did you manage all this? He asked, a note of disbelief in his voice. By not letting your judgment define me, I said simply. By doing the work you never believed I could do, the work you ignored, the work I always knew I could handle. Everything else was just details. My parents exchanged glances, the kind of glance people give when they realize they've been outmaneuvered. There would be no excuses this time, no explanations that could undo the reality. I had taken what they tried to control and turned it into proof of my independence, my intelligence, my resilience. I walked through the living room slowly, letting every step, every movement convey confidence and purpose. I didn't come back to ask for forgiveness, to mend old habits, or to fit into the life you created for me. I came back to show that I can build a life where your approval is irrelevant. For the first time in my life, the silence around me felt earned. Not oppressive, not full of judgment. It was quiet because I had claimed my space, on my terms, and they knew it. As I left the house that evening, I paused at the doorway, glancing back once. Their eyes followed me, but not with control, not with authority, not with the dismissiveness of the past. It was recognition, and for the first time, I smiled, knowing it was deserved. I had walked away a child in their eyes. I returned a force they could neither command nor contain, and while they would spend the rest of their lives replaying the ways they underestimated me, I would spend mine building everything they refused to see, because true power is never given. It is claimed. And Emily Parker had claimed hers.